Dory, I neglected to give the new people my background too. So just real quick, again, my name's Hans Van Brakel. I'm from Kingwood, Texas. And I've been with CCL about 3.5 years now. I'm retired also from ExxonMobil. It was interesting. Every member of the meeting contingent with Representative Crenshaw's office were oil company retirees, which I think gave us a little bit of credibility. But anyhow, I worked for ExxonMobil for about 39 years, retired several years ago. And I'm also the liaison for Representative Crenshaw's office. And just in terms of how I became active in climate change activities, my final assignment with ExxonMobil, among other things, I was in charge of our sustainability effort, which was mostly life cycle analysis and such. But during that tenure, I really learned the science behind what's going on, why carbon emissions, were harmful, and the chemistry behind it and the science behind it. It just seemed rather irrefutable to me. And I guess I really came to a realization about what's really going on. And, shortly after I retired, I started researching, well, how can I get involved to try to make a difference? And I came upon this organization, and what they advocate, carbon fee and dividend, made a lot of sense to me. I thought that was a make sense, kind of moderate middle ground, not far left, not far right kind of approach. And that's why I joined. And I guess the rest is history, but that's kind of my background.
Thank you, Hans. And while we're here, Roger did a great job of jumping to the aha moment. I don't know, you may have shared it already, but was there kind of an aha moment you had this time? Again, you've been there many times, but was there an aha moment? Or if only we had done something different? Well,
again, I've already said it, but I'll say it again. My aha moment was when Hannah kind of admitted that, border carbon adjustment actually might be an idea that could get traction among the Republican conference in Congress. That was very encouraging to me. And again, I think that's fodder for us to take and go forward with in terms of our future interactions with Congress.
All right, thank you. And John, did you share an aha moment? I was supposed to be a second question, but
no, I think what I'll bring it up.
Okay, fair enough.
Hey, Dory.
Yes.
Dory, I want to jump in there for just a minute, if I could. So for all of the new folks on the call today, I just wanted to share a couple of points to keep in mind as we're going through this. So first of all, as we've heard from some of our speakers so far, it just so happens that Houston is pretty much our energy hub for the country. Many of our CCL members here in the Houston area and in other parts of the country are currently employed in the oil and gas industry or have been employed previously and are retired. And so it's very common for us from the oil and gas to be very interested in this topic and to be very deeply involved. That's number one. Second of all, I just want to mention that everyone here on this call, we are all volunteers. We're not paid members. And 99.99% of all CCL members are volunteers. We have a very small core staff of some paid people at the CCL national level, but we are all volunteers volunteering our time and effort. And then thirdly, I just want to mention that, we've heard some very good, interesting stories here about how it went with our lobbying. And everyone here, especially the new folks, if you do want to remain actively involved with us, and we hope that you do, but all CCL volunteers are welcome, more than welcome. We encourage you to join us in future lobbying meetings with our congressional representatives. This is a core focus. It's one of the most critical, important things that we do. So I just want you all to be aware of that. Dory, let's go ahead and continue.
Well, I'm going to open it up to questions you all have, two things. I'm going to share an aha moment from when I went, but then I'm going to see if there's others on this call that did go that I missed, because I thought Jordan was going to be here, but he's not. And then I'll ask our liaison, how often do you meet? DC is once a year, maybe twice a year. Are they going to do a December DC?
Yeah,
You haven't
I
heard?
don't know. They have It's
gonna be virtual. They've announced that.
Yeah, wait a minute, come think, I think it's the first weekend in December, is that right, First weekend in December, virtual conference.
First weekend in December, virtual conference. So virtual, as Roger said, you can have more people. So if you want to just get your teeth wet and, whatever the phrase is, if you want to give it a try, December is going to be a good time for that. And Roger, do you have a hand raised?
I was just going to also kind of support what Hans has said about the border carbon adjustment mechanism, because that came up in the Cornyn meeting as well as Brady's, and that is something that they are seriously looking at. So just that's something that's progress.
I have a question about that. That might be dumb, but how does a border adjustment work without a carbon fee?
I can try to answer that. What I've read in the news is that the folks in Congress who are mentioning that as something that they want to help push through, they're saying that because of all of the existing regulations here in the United States in our country, that just the fact that there are regulations adds a certain cost to the oil and gas industry. And so that would theoretically be what they would call the carbon price. Hans or anyone else you want to add to that?
Yeah,
That's what I've read as well, but I have not yet seen any real numbers. So I don't know if it's $10 a ton or $50 a ton or whatever, but I have heard the same kind of philosophy that it's supposed to represent the added regulatory and remediation costs that American companies pay over and above what, say, China would be paying for the same goods.
Well, I think the main thing is primarily like the European Union is going to put a border carbon adjustment in. They are going to do that. It could be in a year or two, but the advantage that gives the United States over China and like India and all the other countries of the world, most other countries, because we are so much more efficient at producing things like steel, fertilizer. We use a lot less power to make steel, for example. We use a lot of more recycled steel. So we have a clear, big advantage because it's going to act like a tariff, right? So any steel that comes in from China will get a much bigger tariff than the United States will. That gives us an advantage without having much of or any price on carbon. So, but then it's also kind of like one of the pillars of our carbon fee and dividend. So it'd get a portion of that in, and maybe then eventually we get a price on carbon. Is what that's the way I understand it.
Yeah, I would say that I went to an online panel discussion by some organization. I can't do it live, but there were 4 experts in the carbon border adjustment, and basically all of them, at the end of the discussion, they basically said that, yeah, you can plan all this other stuff, but really, you can't have a real carbon border adjustment without a carbon price.
I don't think that's true. I do think you still can have it, but it won't be, I mean, if other countries have a price on carbon, that's to their advantage. And maybe over time we'd see that as well, but we would definitely have an advantage when it came to the amount of energy to produce a ton of steel. And there's numbers out there. I don't remember what they were, but it's a very large difference. Because China uses coke. We use arc furnaces or something that are electric. So it's big.
Jim, you have your hand raised.
Yes, just since the discussion is going that way, a couple of things. First, the border adjustment will work both ways, and the EU is talking about that. So U.S. exports to countries that have border adjustments will be penalized or paying those adjustments. Second, I think it's worth remembering that we have already set a price on carbon. I'm a geologist, so I've been involved in looking at some carbon capture and storage subsurface projects. And there's something called 45Q credits that a number of people are chasing. And the credit they get for plain carbon storage is $50 a ton. So I think, it's important to keep in mind that we have set a price. It's just that we're not applying it as widely as we might across, U.S. manufacturing industry and commercial areas. Thanks.
Yeah, it's just worth noting though, the 45Q is a tax credit and not a fee. So you have to actually make a profit before you would get that credit.
Yep.
But yeah, you're right.
Dory, do we have any other panelists we haven't heard from yet?
Not that I am aware of. I see Waqar has his hand raised, so Waqar will go to you.
Thanks, Dory. Yes, I couldn't resist because the steel. The steel is actually very interesting because yes, we use arc furnaces here mostly to recycle steel, which is great. But the world needs new steel as well. And that currently it's blast furnaces, and a lot of it's manufactured in China. So it's going to be. I see Roger nodding his head. It's going to be very interesting how that's handled because you could say, well, okay, that's a high carbon cost on that steel, but you still actually need that. You still actually need that steel.
Yep. One other thing about border carbon adjustment too, just to point out, I mean, some of us have been bemoaning the fact that, oh my God, Europe's going to pass a border carbon adjustment. And there was the lady from CLC, I forgot her name. I can't recall her name off the top of my head, but she made a very compelling case that if Europe passes a border carbon adjustment, it will be a windfall for us, because even though we may end up paying a fee, we're so much more carbon efficient than countries like China and India and Russia, that we will overwhelm those countries in terms of being able to compete on a price point of view. And so, we really should not be afraid of a border carbon adjustment in Europe. It will actually be a very good thing for United States trade if that goes through and passes.
That has always been my impression, is that a European border adjustment will create the same thing here and maybe even a fee here. But all the new conversation about fees already existing is interesting.
Yeah, well, again, the basic point is that we may pay a fee to trade with Europe, but our fee will be dwarfed by the fee that Russia and China and India and those countries would pay. So that would really give us a leg up.
This has
I think
been a.
Can I just say real quick? I think Waqar's point is really good though, because it's not clear whether it's going to be like some kind of average for the U.S. that would be the adjustment that would be for steel, for example, or would it be applied to individual, like if one producer has a real high efficiency, whether they would see more of a benefit than if we had like raw steel from hematite and all the other, iron ore, which would be a higher, whether that would then be adjusted within the United States as we export to that's not clear, I don't think, at this point.
Yep.
This has been a really great panel discussion, and I want to thank everybody that has spoken so far. I want to open this up for a few minutes to the other folks on the call, whether you're on Zoom or in person, especially the new folks. And I realize that because this is a new conversation, this might really be all new for you, but if you have any what I'll call beginner questions, those are also great for us to help address those as well. So please raise your hand if you have something or shout it out. And let's spend a few minutes on this before we go on with the rest of our program.
Yeah, that's for anybody.
Okay. Yeah, I have a quick question, if you don't mind.
Yep.
Just scoot up. Wait a minute. Yeah, my question is, who is deciding the direction that the CCL supports? Like, what kind of legislation? Is that made at like a national level or like a state chapter level?
Good question. And Joe, you can respond, but I know that there's national decisions, right, for national projects, but then we can, as a local chapter, decide to actually statewide. We did a statewide initiative, so we can take some actions statewide, but national gets decided at the national. Did I say that right?
That sounds correct. I mean, at the very, when CCL was initially created as an organization, years back, very early on, the founding members of the organization were kind of struggling to understand how can we make the biggest impact possible, and to make our efforts really count. And they tried a few things. They weren't successful in the beginning, and through their own research and learning, it was decided upon that this particular policy that we're advocating for, which is the carbon fee and dividend plus the border carbon adjustment, truly is one of the most impactful ways that we can make a truly big difference to help solve the climate change issue. And so that's really how this started. And so at the national level and for each chapter, that's really our overriding goal and objective. But as Dory said, we also are at liberty to work on other actions, either locally, citywide, or statewide as well. That was a good question.
We'll hear about some of those when we do the review of what we're working on now. And for the new members, I don't know if John or someone wants to mention that the En-ROADS, there's a tool that MIT created. It's very, very cool for geeks who love to just tweak numbers. Andrew took the training on it. And you can go and say, oh, I want electrification of all the cars. That's going to solve. And I want to do tree planting. That's going to help. And ultimately, though, spoiler alert, it's not until you put a price on carbon that's escalating, that gets the economy behind it, that you start to see the leveling off, the solution manifest. So it is, and it's biased. It's a tool for scientists. And it's very cool. All right, sorry. Other questions? Are there any hands raised here? Or
Anybody else?
Well, then I think we can move on to our program, Joe.
Okay, very good. So I'm going to share my screen again. Hopefully everybody can see. Okay, so another topic that's been in the news just last week, the Supreme Court here in the United States has ruled on a major landmark case that involved the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, which could cause problems for climate advocates in getting additional regulations passed or possibly even new legislation. So CCL National responded to that, and on their main website, if you go and log in there, they crafted a statement, a CCL National statement in response to the Supreme Court case, which was West Virginia versus the EPA, and the web link is there. I'm not going to go through that now. We don't have time, but basically the basic summary is that because regulation is impacted in a lot of ways, number one, sometimes they go into the Supreme Court or other courts and they go into the court system for years and years and years. This particular case goes back to the Obama administration just years ago. And so for a lot of reasons, regulation is not as effective as it could be. And therefore, it truly does require legislation. And as we've said earlier, just a minute ago, the most impactful type of legislation would be to create a carbon fee and dividend with a border carbon adjustment. But the statement is there if you have time after the meeting to go and look through that. Next item coming up, there's a book here called The World's Littlest Book on Climate. Many of us here have heard of that and are aware of it. If you haven't, it's really an excellent book. And we have a free download if you go to this particular link, and you can download that for free, and you can share that with others who you may want to have others learn more about what's going on with climate. Not everybody really understands what climate change is or what the cause of it is. So that's in 10 minutes. Take a look at it. The web links, I've put all the web links already in the chat. I'm going to do it one more time here just in case anyone has missed those. Okay, so they're in the chat window again. Hopefully everybody sees that. Going on, immediately following this meeting, we end at noon, and we'll stay on track. We have our CCL National Monthly Speaker. And that speaker is really something you may be very interested in hearing and tuning in. His name is Nathiel Stinnett from the Environmental Voter Project. He's the executive director. And so there you can see on the screen on this month's call, he's going to be sharing how his organization is changing the voting behavior of people concerned about preserving a livable climate. It turns out that many people who really care about the climate, fishermen, hunters, people that just want to get outside, they're not always very good at voting. And so this organization is devoted specifically to get those specific people to vote, to become voters, to get them registered and to turn out to vote based on climate. So that should be a very good topic. Next, we're going to go into our 5 lever status reports. We cover our 5 levers, which are the lobby team, grass tops, grassroots, media, and chapter development. And we'll go through those. Judith, I know you've been out on vacation. I'm not sure if you can share any updates, perhaps for lobbying, any efforts that you're working on.
I mean, we basically just heard about the June lobby efforts. And so our next step is to work into the fall and maybe see if we can create some online meetings in the fall. So I'll reach out to everybody in the next month or so.
Great. And let me mention that if any of the new people on the call today, if you might be interested in participating with lobbying, Judith, maybe you can put your email in the chat and people can respond directly back to you.
Joe or Judith, one of you may want to explain to the new people what EICDA is. They're probably not familiar with that nomenclature. Sure.
Yep, I'll cover that really quickly. So that is our bill that's in the House. It's HR 2307, Energy, Innovation, and Carbon Dividend Act. And we have, this is an old slide, but we had 96 co-sponsors in the House. I'm not sure if we've gone above that, but it was at least 96, which is pretty good. Let's see.
I also mentioned for new members that Susan Adams, our regional director, I guess, of Third Coast, has some funds to help new members, people that have not been to Washington, D.C. before, with a stipend or a financial help to go to your first meeting. So there is, and it's not cheap. So, but it's not going to pay for the trip, but it certainly will help. And that's out there for future meetings.
Thank you, Roger. Anything else, Judith?
No.
Okay, moving on. Now we have grass tops and Court. We'll talk about grass tops activity. Is Court on the call?
Yeah, I don't think she's on the call. But this is an example, though, of work that we do at the local level beyond what's being done nationally. So she's working on getting a Texas-wide academia statement, getting professors, economists, scientists to work with the colleges to agree that action's needed. And then she's working on a panel with other nonprofits that are focused on this, working on getting a panel presentation of people who are running a candidate panel and having it be a Q&A time. So that should be good. That should be coming up in September. And if you want to help her with any of the projects, that's her email address right there.
Thank you, Dory. And I just wanted to mention that in the right side of the screen there goes our local organizations who have endorsed the carbon fee and dividend. They're working with us. And so that's one of the major things we do is we try to reach out to organizations that are willing to help out solve climate change with us.
She needs to add for Emerson Unitarian Universalist Church too, because we endorse it as well.
You'll have to remind her. Okay, moving on to Mark, talking about grassroots.
All right, well, welcome everybody, especially new people who are attending for the first time. So the grassroots level, we have 2 main activities, and we're looking to do presentations. In the past, we've done those for both college and high school groups. Students that are interested in the environment, they may have their own group and they reach out to us because they're interested in carbon fee. So we've done some presentations. We usually take time to prepare those ahead of time and give several people parts in that presentation, so one person doesn't have to do the whole thing. And then we have a Q&A, which is really interesting because we get to hear what people think. The second event that we try to go to is tabling. And so in the past, we've found festivals like Earth Day in Houston. We've also done some environmental groups. Some churches may have some events too. And then we just set up a table. We have handouts. We have letters to Congress, forms that they can fill out. And this is really a good way to speak one-on-one with people that have questions or they want more information from us. So we currently don't have anything scheduled, but we are working on that. People in my group, there's several of us who are going to meet this month and talk about opportunities where we can reach out and try to do either a presentation or a tabling event.
Can I give you a last minute, hot off the press tabling opportunity? Next Saturday, so this a week from today, 11 to 4 down in Sunnyside, there's a chance I have a pop-up tent, I'll have a table, I can get it set up, but there's a chance to volunteer to talk to community members about climate and solar. So check with Dory if you are interested. I've been asked to be there. I can't be there the whole time. So it's the same thing like what you helped with Juneteenth. All right, John will get a phone call.
Mark, anything else?
No, that's it.
All right, thank you, Mark. Moving on to the media team, and that's myself. I'm the leader of the media team. And so just some quick background about what we do with media. So we like to really be involved in all the different aspects of media. There's newspaper, print media, for example, the Houston Chronicle. There's radio media, TV, and also social media. And so specifically the items listed here as far as our activity, I have there the links for our two most recent CCL Houston newsletters that we've sent out, one for June and the one we just sent out earlier this week for July. And then for print media, we like to write lots of letters to the editor, expressing our opinion on change and what we can do to help solve climate change. And so I have listed there one example of a letter to the editor that I recently submitted that was published in the publication. And then at the very bottom there on social media, that's our Twitter handle at CCL Houston. We're also on Facebook and Instagram, although Twitter and Facebook are our primary outlets that we use. On the next couple of pages, I always like to include some screen prints, just showing what kinds of activity is going on with our at CCL Houston account. And so I'm going to go through these pretty quickly, but anytime that I see something that's interesting on the left side, you can see there, it's referring to a news article about the Tesla megapacks that are being used to replace the last remaining coal plant in Hawaii. And so, this is a real world example of how fossil fuel can be replaced, in this case with battery storage to help clean up the electric grid. On the right side, there was a posting there about the extreme mega drought conditions taking place, especially in the western part of our country. And, it's really just a very grim outlook. It does seem to be getting worse and worse. We're seeing firsthand the direct effects of climate change occurring. A couple more here on the left. Another way that people are taking action through climate advocacy is by making their voices heard. In this case, you can see there the world's largest public relations firm called Edelman. Edelman has major oil and gas fossil fuel clients. And so there's an activity taking place to try to let them know that that's not helping us, right? They need to stop that. On the right side, I do a series here called Future of Low Carbon Transportation. You can see here the first electric fire truck deployed in the US. That's in Los Angeles. That's pretty exciting, right? A couple of other things locally here in Houston, some recent positive news in Texas. Texas working with the federal government, making plans to install hundreds of new electric vehicle charging stations all across the state. And then the right side there, another tweet, millions of Americans under extreme heat warnings due to climate change. That's one of the major impacts that we're going to be seeing. Next slide very quickly. I do another kind of a series here, trying to get HISD, the Houston School District, to start procuring electric school buses. And so I have lots and lots of tweets to HISD about that topic. On the right side there, there's another organization, a very conservative organization called Texas Land and Liberty Coalition, and they've become very, very active in the outlying rural areas, explaining how farming and ranching is very compatible with responsible renewable energy development. And so I thought that was very interesting too. So that's something that I retweeted. A couple more items here on the left. So here's a picture that was taken in Washington, D.C. That was Jordan and a few other folks with Representative Castro in that meeting there. I wish we had more photos. The guys that go, you have to remember to take photos for us, okay? But that's the one that we had. And then the right side, another example, mega drought. This is the Great Salt Lake City, almost completely drying up. So just very bad things that are happening. I think this is my last slide here. Also, there are some very good climate advocacy editorial comics that I see, and those are really good to include. So there's, right, that's in Texas. That's like an oil well that's blowing up the thermometer. There she blows. And then the right side there, what's the impact of extreme weather in Texas? Well, we've had 12 separate billion-dollar disasters in Texas just during 2021. So there you go. And Dory, it's your turn now, chapter development.
Okay. So chapter development, I just try and welcome you all and make you feel part, find a place where you want to take action because you found us because you care. And just by joining, as I say, that's good. By being a member, that helps the numbers, but taking action is good. We have a Slack channel that you can just let me know and I'll add you to the Slack channel. That's our internal communication. And if you want an easy way to volunteer for the comfort of your home, you can join chapter development because we get a list of who comes in every month and we give them a call and send them an email and engage in conversation. So I would love more help with that. And then I just want to, Andrew and Mark are both here. They were in this room on Father's Day, tabling at a innovative energy fest, and it was just, for me, it was a lot of fun. We built and raced solar electric cars, and I now know what I'm getting my grandchildren for Christmas because they were very cool. One of them was a wooden one with a remote control that you could build. Very, very neat. So that's chapter development. Back to you, Joe.
Okay. And here we have the meet and greet. Do you want to cover that one, or Mark?
Yeah, so once a month, we try to do something besides this meeting, chapter meeting, where we're usually focused on our interest in getting out the word. So this is a chance to get acquainted with each other once a month. And so this month, in 2 weeks, July 23rd, some of us will meet downtown in front of the Houston Public Library at 8:45. And you can park along the street in parking meters. And we're going to take a walk for about an hour, walk along Buffalo Trail, which if any of you seen that, it's very beautiful now. They've done all kinds of improvements on it. So I'm looking forward to it and I'm inviting everybody.
Thank you, Mark. And here's where we normally do time permitting breakout sessions, but I don't think we're going to have time here. But instead of that, let me stop sharing. And we always like to hear from the new folks that are still on the call with us to see if you have any questions. We're at the end of our meeting here. Any feedback on, how you like the meeting, what else you might like to see? Just any kind of general feedback would be great.
Take a picture, Joe.
Yep, and we need to take a picture. Let me do that now before I forget.
Sure.
Is that okay? So for the folks that don't have their cameras turned on, if you can go ahead and turn those on, and we'll take a nice group photo. Oh, we didn't get you, Dory. Let's try again, right?
Oh,
Okay,
sorry.
1, 2, 3. Okay, let me just make sure that turned out okay. Yeah, that was a very nice photo. Thank everybody for doing that. Okay, so we do have a few minutes left before we have to end. Any last minute comments, feedback, questions? Anybody, especially the new folks, we want to hear from you.
If not, I thank the Woodlands folks for coming and being part of our meeting and sharing.
Maybe I could plug, we've got this, our second meeting at Texas 08 has actually become a Third Coast meeting. It's called Cocktails and Conversation, which is kind of a regional Zoom happy hour every month. It's the last Saturday of the month at 4 or 5 p.m. And we're taking the summer off, but we're going to have another meeting. So the next meeting would be September 24th. And we've had some really good speakers. It's not just that, we don't just get together and have a beer together or whatever, or the beverage of your choice. But we've had some really great speakers. We had a vintner from California come in and talk about the impacts of climate change on his wine production. We had an expert on the Texas grid who talked about what the freeze Uri, the impact on that had on the grid and what the legislature's been doing. I'm trying to think, we had a couple others. But anyway, and we're looking at the national conference. There was a presentation called Earth Emergency, which is actually a PBS. It's been on PBS. There's like 4 vignettes of tipping points, tipping points in the Arctic and the forests and things like that. And the director was there, and someone else, one of the, anyway, they had a panel discussion, and they will do it for local chapters as well. So that's who we're looking at trying to get for September. And so just stay tuned. Announcement for the happy hour won't come out until September sometime, but, and we also have Dr. Barry, we have a fun climate quiz that's kind of just like the New York Times, or similar to New York Times, and Dr. Barry pulls those questions together, and there is a fantastic prize that's offered at the end for whoever comes up with the most correct answers. So anyway, it's turned out to be, it's fun. So if you have a chance, keep looking for that, and we'll have it in September.
Hey, Roger, once you have the information for the next one coming up, if you can send that to me, I'd be happy to include that in our Houston newsletter that goes out.
Okay.
Thank you. And Ripley, I think you had your hand up, Ripley?
Yeah, I just had a quick question about, so I know this is the monthly meeting. Are they usually held on the second Saturday of every month, or is that?
That's correct, yes. Typically, we're always the second Saturday unless we have a conflict. Like last month, we had a conflict with our national conference in Washington, D.C. I want to go to Jim Tucker. You posted something very interesting there in the chat about Rep. Fletcher opening a new office. Are you saying, is that an open house that we can attend, or maybe you can provide more details?
As I recall, and I'm sorry I don't have other details, but it sounded like an open invitation. Thank you.
Cool.
And someone else, was it Judith? You were going to ask something, or I missed someone else?
John,
Sorry. Go ahead.
That video about feedback loops was mentioned. Give a good URL on it. You can go to feedback loops climate, all one word, feedbackloopsclimate.org.
Yes.
Get you to the introduction and all 4 the cases, and it gets you the whole thing. And it's amazing. It'll depress you for about 2 or 3 days. Then you got to recover and get to work.
I think, let me repeat back what I think I heard John saying. And you're referring to one of the tweets that I think that I was showing, or was that in the newsletter? I can't remember where I had that. But there's an organization called feedback.loop.climate Org, I believe is the name of the organization. And they came out, I think recently with a video clip. And I didn't really know what a feedback loop was. And I listened to that, and it's actually extremely interesting, but also extremely scary. And I'll give you one of the examples that I learned about from watching that. For example, at the North and South Poles, where we have the ice caps, and the ice caps being white while they're there, they reflect back out the sun radiation that's coming. But as the ice is melting, it's no longer having that ability to reflect back the sun. And so instead, that's additional solar heat that's coming into the planet, which is contributing to the increase in temperature. So that was very scary, I thought. John, did you want to add anything more about that?
Yeah, that's one of the 4 examples they give there. It's called the albedo effect, and then they have 3 other examples. So feedbackloops.climate.org will get you all of them. And it's really, everybody needs to look at that.
So,
Thank you.
so Joe, you'll put that in the next newsletter that comes out always around the week before this meeting. All right, we should close up, give people a chance to stretch legs before if they want to take the new one.
All right. So I want to thank you very much again, everybody that attended. Thank you so much. And I hope that we're going to see you again at our future meetings. Have a great weekend.